John Key.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to support the apology from the Crown and to offer the gratitude and thanks of the National Party to those New Zealanders who served in the then Republic of Vietnam. I also offer our apologies to them and their families for the failure of the Crown to properly acknowledge or address the results of their service in a toxic environment in Vietnam. Over the 8 years' involvement of the New Zealand Force, nearly 3,260 New Zealanders served in Vietnam. Some 37 were killed in action and nearly 200 were wounded. At the height of New Zealand's involvement in the war in 1968, 540 New Zealand troops were deployed. New Zealand has not treated these veterans well. The service they carried out in the name of this country has often gone unacknowledged or been conveniently forgotten. At times, some people have showed outright hostility towards them. More often, the personal legacies of their service for both them and their families was ignored or denied. They have had to suffer the indignity of two reports, the Reeves report and the McLeod report, both of which reached conclusions that all veterans knew to be wrong. These reports were factually incorrect, fatally flawed and deeply offensive to many veterans. I wish to state for the record that National rejects those reports as a basis for policy making now or in the future. In 2004, Parliament's Health Select Committee finally acknowledged what had long been denied, that New Zealand service personnel serving in Vietnam had been exposed to a toxic environment and that toxic environment had had a detrimental effect on the health of those veterans and on the health of their children. I would like to acknowledge the role my colleague Judith Collins played in pushing for that Select Committee inquiry. I would also wish to acknowledge the role that John Masters played in reaching the point we are at today. John was the last commander of 161 Battery in Vietnam, and it was his perseverance and finally the map he produced that proved that New Zealand service personnel had been exposed to defoliants in Phuoc Toi province. Without his hard work, the findings of the inquiry would not have happened. Today, as a direct result of that inquiry, veterans and their families are here to receive a formal apology for their mistreatment. But they are also here to remember and commemorate New Zealand's role in a difficult war and to allow us as a country to finally say thank you to those who served when called upon. It is also time for us to remember the 37 New Zealanders who died in the service of their country in Vietnam and the 600 or so service personnel who have passed away in the intervening years. Vietnam was a war that divided New Zealand, and the period was one of bitter sentiment from some towards those who served. But the New Zealanders who were asked to serve in this war were not responsible for the decisions taken by politicians at the time, and they should not have been treated as though they were. So to the members of Victor and Whisky Companies of the 1st Battalion, Royal New Zealand Infantry Regiment, to 4 Troop New Zealand Special Air Service, to the members of the New Zealand Joint Services Medical Team, to 161 Battery Royal New Zealand Artillery Regiment, to the Royal New Zealand Engineers, and to those other New Zealand service personnel who served attached to the units of the Australian and United States military, we finally say sorry. New Zealand had a responsibility to these people. They were asked by their country to do a dangerous job, and they did so with honour and dignity. The treatment they received, both in Vietnam and then in the years after their return to New Zealand, was unfair and unacceptable. I hope that this apology and the acceptance finally that New Zealanders were exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam will go some way to making up for our previous failings.
Go to a more personal note for a few seconds than the speeches that have been made so far. I am very conscious and acutely embarrassed by my name being mentioned more than once today, and I think that it's very important to acknowledge to those in the room who aren't soldiers that we are a very strong band, and we are not good at dealing with tall poppies. And I would vigorously resist any suggestion that anything that I did at any time was a individual issue. We've always worked as a team, and the fact that something happened, when was it, Judith?
2003.
Yes, 2003 became an imprimatur which allowed this lady to work on our behalf. It was just a bit of sheer luck. In fact, Tom Aldridge and somebody else also got hold of me and said, we've got one of those maps if your wheels run down. So nothing's new, and I think that, as I say, that was an imprimatur. I would just like, in your indulgence, to very much acknowledge those people who have taken the work that you did in your committee and at that select committee, and worked through to the joint working group and to the joint implementation group and to the team that produced Tribute to 8. Those are all another group of soldiers whose names weren't mentioned today, and whose valuable work is even more important. Robin said we can all do stuff in the past, but somebody has to make it happen. And these guys and the people in this room who are actively engaged in that today, who are making things happen in Wellington, and they are the real heroes, if there are any heroes. And sir, all I can say to you from this great height is if at some future time, not too future, you find a place for this lady which encourages our you would be doing very well.
I really have no idea how many people are saying that. Just keep it Yeah, he got out. He worked yes.
Front of these blokes, can I say, you look terrific.
I said to John, lovely the personal tribute paid then by, interesting, by our John and by Jim. It's lovely.
Jim Anderson, here is the name.
A special day for New Zealand, and it's been a day that's taken far too long to come about. But I do want to thank all of you again very sincerely, and particularly you, John, for what you did in terms of ultimately producing the maps and your perseverance over many, many years with your friends and colleagues around the room to make the outcome today possible. So I want to thank all of you. I want to acknowledge you for what you did for New Zealand, and to apologise once again for what you had to go through when you came home. And I think you can get a sense of Parliament that's not that often that we come together. We were not at each other's throats. That was one of the occasions when I happened to agree with the Prime Minister. But I think she's right, that this was an opportunity where everyone came together. And I think you'll find New Zealand will come together tonight when they get an opportunity to see that on television. And you can feel that sense of emotion for what was a pretty difficult war. And that sense is still pretty raw in New Zealanders' minds, I think. So thank you for coming, and thank you for all you've done. And I know the weekend's going to be a very, very special weekend and a chance to reflect some difficult memories, but also probably some happy memories of camaraderie in a very foreign country, which has changed a lot in the last 30 or 40 years. Robin, I don't know if you want to say anything.
Well, thank you very much. And,
put you on the spot, don't you?
thank you for the invitation. There's one, you mentioned the support around from all parties. Something I've learned since then was that in actual fact that was not requested. the Prime Minister and the government did not request that. And I think that strengthens what we saw today, actually, immeasurably. It really does. So thank you for that. And I would also, in the long process, I mean, John was involved and others were involved over a long period of time, and then, as I said elsewhere, the Select Committee came along and found in favour of what they'd been saying all along, and that was a huge step forward. But that's only the beginning. We then have to build on that and actually do things. And I'm very grateful to yourself, and particularly to Judith, for her role in ensuring that the Select Committee, that the findings of the Select Committee actually not only were understood, but were acted on. And that's because there was a danger of it slipping away. I'm very glad indeed that hasn't happened. And what we saw today was a part of that process. It's the MOU now that has to be developed. And I know that we in the RSA and EBSA can count on you when you take office.
I told you last year.
Come back and have another layer up in the proper office. Don't worry. Show you a good time.
To keep that level of interest, cooperation and engagement going.
And we are in committee, aren't we?
We are.
Well, I can claim Chatham House rules.
Yeah, exactly.
And just finally, decisions are being taken right now that will define the shape of Veterans Affairs and the support and the acts of Parliament, the statutes that Veterans Affairs is going to have to administer for the future. And there may be room to argue some of those points and decisions that are being taken now. I would hope that in the future we can concentrate on making whatever comes out of that actually work, rather than relitigating how we got there. Because it's very easy to get tangled up and simply go over and over again what's already been decided. I think at this point we have to work hard to make damn sure that what emerges actually works in favour of veterans, not just Vietnam veterans, but all veterans. Thank you very much.